You ever have a full-blown argument in your head with someone who isn't even there? Or spend 45 minutes crafting the perfect text just to delete it and send LOL OK instead? Yeah. Welcome to the Overthinkers Club. Membership is free, but the mental exhaustion, that'll cost you your sanity. Overthinking isn't just a bad habit, it's mental quicksand. The more you struggle with it, the deeper you sink. But today, we're pulling you out. I've got brutal, no BS ways to stop overthinking before it eats your life. Some of these will slap you in the face. Some might make you laugh, but all of them will help you break free. So, if your brain has been holding you hostage, let's stage an intervention. Ready? Let's go. 1. Accept that you'll never be 100% certain, and that's okay. Let's be brutally honest. Certainty is an illusion. It does not exist. Yet, overthinkers chase it like it's some golden ticket to a mistake-free life. We want guarantees before we take action. We want to know, without a shred of doubt, that we are making the right choice. But here's the ugly truth. Life doesn't come with guarantees. You will never have all the information, and no matter how much you analyze, you can still end up wrong. Think about the biggest decisions in life: choosing a career, getting married, moving to a new city. Nobody knows for sure if they're making the best choice. The people who seem confident, they are just as clueless, but they've accepted that uncertainty is part of the deal. Overthinking is just procrastination in disguise. People convince themselves that if they think long enough, they will reach some magical moment where everything becomes clear. But that moment never comes. The reality is that no amount of analyzing can eliminate uncertainty. You can spend weeks debating a decision only to end up in the exact same position. Even worse, you could make the so-called perfect choice and still face unexpected problems. Overthinking does not protect you from failure. It just drains your energy before you even start. A few years ago, I was offered a new job in a different city. It paid more, had great benefits, and looked amazing on paper. But I spent months agonizing over the decision. What if I hated it? What if I moved and regretted it? What if I was making the biggest mistake of my life? I made endless lists, talked to everyone I knew, and kept waiting for some undeniable sign that would tell me what to do. But no sign ever came. Eventually, I just took the job because I was sick of thinking about it. And guess what? It was fine. Not perfect, not terrible, just fine. A year later, I left that job anyway because I realized it wasn't the right fit. That was the moment I understood something important. All the stress, all the sleepless nights, all the overanalyzing. It was pointless. I could have just made the decision, learned from it, and adjusted. Instead, I wasted months trying to predict an outcome I could never control. Nobody gets it right every time. The most successful people are not the ones who make perfect choices, but the ones who make a choice and adapt when necessary. They do not waste time searching for certainty. They take action, face whatever happens, and adjust along the way. Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" ask yourself, "Will I be able to handle it if it does?" The answer is almost always yes. Accept that you will never be 100% certain. The sooner you embrace that reality, the faster you can move forward and actually live. 2. Trust your first instinct. We've all been there. You get a gut feeling about something, maybe a person, a job, a situation, but instead of trusting it, you start overthinking. You start questioning yourself, gathering opinions, making lists, and researching every possible angle. You tell yourself, "I just need to be sure." But let's be real, you already knew the answer from the start. Your gut isn't some magical force. It's pattern recognition. It's your brain picking up on subtle cues, past experiences, and unconscious knowledge before you can fully articulate why something feels off or right. And yet, instead of listening, most of us shove that instinct aside and let fear take over. And here's where it gets brutal. Overthinking is a self-betrayal. By ignoring your first instinct, you're basically telling yourself, "I don't trust my own judgment." And when you do that repeatedly, you train yourself to rely on external validation instead of your own inner wisdom. Most people don't ignore their gut because they don't know what to do. They ignore it because they don't want to take responsibility for their choices. Think about it. If you follow your instinct and it turns out to be wrong, it's all on you. But if you overanalyze, get advice from 20 people, and still make a bad decision, you get to say, "Well, at least I did my research." Overthinking is just a way to avoid accountability. People convince themselves that by delaying a decision and gathering more information, they are being smart and logical, but in reality, they are just avoiding discomfort. They are afraid of making the wrong choice, so they paralyze themselves into making no choice at all. But here's the truth. Not making a decision is still a decision, and it's usually the worst one. Let's talk about what happens when you constantly ignore your gut. You become someone who needs constant reassurance. You stop trusting yourself and start relying on other people to make decisions for you. You hesitate so much that you miss opportunities. While you're busy overthinking, someone else is out there taking action and moving forward. You get stuck in toxic situations because you ignore red flags. You tell yourself you're overreacting, even when every instinct is screaming that something isn't right. And worst of all, you start to feel disconnected from yourself. You stop believing in your own ability to make choices. You start doubting everything, even the small stuff. A few years ago, I met someone who, on the surface, seemed like a great person. Charismatic, charming, well-liked. But something in my gut told me something is off. I couldn't explain it. There was no logical reason to feel that way. So I convinced myself I was overreacting. I ignored the feeling and kept that person in my life. A year later, they betrayed me in a way I never saw coming. And looking back, I realized all the signs were there. I just didn't want to trust myself enough to believe them. I learned a painful lesson. Your gut doesn't need to explain itself. If something feels off, that's enough of a reason. After that, I made a rule. If I have to convince myself that something is okay, it probably isn't. People act like they need absolute certainty before making a decision. But certainty is a myth. You will never be 100% sure about anything in life. The only way to truly know if something is right for you is to make a choice and see what happens. Successful people don't waste time overanalyzing every decision. They trust their gut, take action, and adjust along the way. They know that mistakes are part of the process and that it's better to make a wrong choice than to make no choice at all. So here's the challenge. Next time you feel something deep in your gut, listen to it. Don't drown it in overthinking. Don't wait for outside validation. Don't let fear of making the wrong decision keep you from making any decision. Because when you finally start trusting yourself, you stop living in doubt and you start living with confidence. 3. Imagine the absolute worst-case scenario. Most people will tell you, don't think about the worst-case scenario. Stay positive. But let's be real, that's terrible advice. Because the truth is, your brain is already imagining the worst-case scenario, whether you like it or not. Overthinkers are experts at it. We catastrophize everything. Send a risky text? They're probably going to ghost me forever. Speak up in a meeting. Everyone will think I'm stupid. Try something new? I'll fail, ruin my reputation, and have to live under a bridge. But here's where this gets controversial. Instead of running from the worst-case scenario, face it head-on. Imagine it. Play it out in detail. And then ask yourself, so what? Most people don't overthink because they're actually in danger. They overthink because their brains trick them into believing that discomfort equals danger. But here's the reality. Discomfort won't kill you. Embarrassment won't kill you. Making a mistake won't kill you. Let's break it down. What's the absolute worst thing that could happen if you bomb a job interview? You don't get the job. You apply for another one. Embarrass yourself in public. People laugh for 5 seconds. Then they forget because they're too busy worrying about their own lives. Make a bad decision. You learn from it. You move on. Life continues. Most of the things we obsess over are temporary, and if you really think about it, the worst-case scenario is never as terrifying as your brain makes it seem. One of my biggest fears used to be public embarrassment. I was terrified of looking stupid in front of people. So, naturally, life decided to humble me. A few years ago, I was giving a presentation at work. Big audience, important people in the room. I was nervous, but had practiced a million times. Then, right in the middle of my talk, I completely blanked. My brain shut down. I just stood there, staring at everyone like a deer in headlights. It was my worst nightmare happening in real time. At that moment, I had 2 choices: panic and run, which, trust me, I considered, or own it and keep going. So I took a deep breath, made a joke about my brain buffering, and carried on. And guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody fired me. The earth didn't swallow me whole. I walked out of that room realizing that the worst thing I could imagine had just happened, and I survived. That was the moment I learned a powerful lesson. Fear exaggerates everything. Reality is never as bad as we imagine it. Most people think confidence comes from avoiding failure, but it actually comes from knowing you can survive failure. Once you accept that you can handle the worst-case scenario, you become unstoppable. So the next time your brain starts spinning with anxiety, do this. Imagine the absolute worst thing that could happen. Play it out. Go full disaster mode. Now ask yourself, what would I actually do if that happened? Realize that no matter what, you would figure it out. Because that's the truth. You always do. The scariest thing isn't the worst-case scenario. The scariest thing is wasting your life being afraid of things that will probably never happen. Four, give your thoughts a time limit. Here's a controversial truth. Overthinking is just mental procrastination. You tell yourself you're being thorough, rational, and responsible by thinking through every possible outcome. But let's be honest, you're not solving anything. You're just delaying a decision because deep down, you're afraid to act. And guess what? The longer you think, the harder it gets to actually do something. That's why one of the best ways to stop overthinking is to give your thoughts a time limit. If you don't, your brain will keep spiraling forever. Most people believe that if they just think about something long enough, they'll eventually have a moment of absolute clarity, like some divine revelation will strike and suddenly they'll know exactly what to do. But that moment never comes, because overthinking isn't about finding the best decision. It's about avoiding the responsibility of making one. That's why you need a deadline. Give yourself a set amount of time to think, whether it's 10 minutes, an hour, or a day, depending on the decision. When time's up, you decide and move forward. No more endless analysis. No more just one more day to think about it. If you don't put a time limit on your thoughts, they will take up infinite space in your mind. Let's talk about what really happens when you overthink without limits. You waste time. While you're stuck in a mental loop, someone else is out there making moves. You get more confused. The longer you think about a decision, the more uncertain you become because you start considering ridiculous possibilities that weren't even problems before. You regret the time lost. Instead of enjoying life, you're spending hours, days, or even weeks stuck in a thought spiral. And here's the worst part. Most decisions aren't even that deep. People will spend an entire week obsessing over what text to send, what restaurant to pick, or whether they should post something online. A week over something that won't even matter in 2 days. There was a time when I couldn't make a simple decision without agonizing over it. I would sit there debating whether to say yes or no to plans, whether to start a project, or whether to send a message. One day I caught myself staring at my phone for 45 minutes trying to decide whether or not to text someone back. 45 minutes. That's an entire episode of a TV show. That's half a workout. That's time I could have spent doing literally anything else. And for what? A text? That's when it hit me. Overthinking is just time theft. And the worst part, I was the one robbing myself. After that, I set a rule. I get 5 minutes to decide on small things, 24 hours for big things, and after that, it's action time. If I can't make a choice in that time, the answer is automatically no. Not because I'm indecisive, but because I refuse to waste my life stuck in my own head. Imagine 2 people. One spends a week agonizing over every decision, constantly worrying about what could go wrong. The other makes a choice quickly, moves forward, and deals with whatever happens. A year later, who do you think is happier? The truth is, overthinking won't make life safer. It won't protect you from mistakes. It won't guarantee that everything turns out perfectly. All it does is steal your time. So if you're stuck in your head, give yourself a deadline. When time's up, make a decision and move on. Because the world isn't waiting for you to stop overthinking. It's moving forward, whether you do or not. 5. Embrace the 80% rule. Here's a truth most people don't want to admit. Perfection is just fear in a fancy outfit. You tell yourself, I'm just making sure it's the best it can be. But what you really mean is, I'm scared of failing, so I'm going to keep tweaking, overthinking and delaying until it feels perfect. Newsflash, perfect doesn't exist. And waiting for it is the fastest way to waste your life. That's why one of the most powerful ways to stop overthinking is to embrace the 80% rule. Get something 80% right, then move forward. Most people assume that being a perfectionist is a good thing. They think it means they have high standards. But let's be real, perfectionism isn't about quality, it's about control. Perfectionists don't hold back because they want to be great. They hold back because they're terrified of criticism. They're scared of looking stupid, making mistakes, or putting something out into the world that isn't 100% flawless. But here's the irony. The people who succeed the most aren't the perfectionists. They're the ones who take action, even when things are imperfect. The best writers aren't the ones who agonize over every sentence. They're the ones who write, publish, and improve along the way. The best entrepreneurs aren't the ones who wait for the perfect business idea. They're the ones who start messy, make mistakes, and adjust as they go. The happiest people aren't the ones who make the perfect choice every time. They're the ones who make a decision and own it, flaws and all. Meanwhile, perfectionists stay stuck in an endless loop of, I just need to tweak this one more thing. And before they know it, years have passed, and they have nothing to show for it. Let's talk about what actually happens when you refuse to embrace the 80% rule. You never finish anything. You keep editing, adjusting, and refining, but you never actually launch, publish, or complete what you started. You burn out. Perfectionists work twice as hard for diminishing returns. You spend hours obsessing over tiny details that nobody else even notices. You fall behind. While you're fine-tuning, someone else is out there taking action, making mistakes, and getting better in real time. You develop a deep fear of failure because you've trained yourself to believe that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. You start avoiding risks altogether, and worst of all, you start losing confidence in yourself. When you never allow yourself to be done, you never get to experience the satisfaction of accomplishment. A few years ago, I wanted to start a project, something I had dreamed about for years. But instead of actually doing it, I spent months researching, planning, and perfecting every tiny detail. Every time I got close to launching, I found another reason why it wasn't ready. The website wasn't perfect. The content could be better. I needed just one more week to tweak it. That one more week turned into a year. Eventually, I realized what was happening. I wasn't improving my project. I was hiding behind perfectionism because I was scared. So I made a deal with myself, 80% and go. I would allow myself to get something 80% good. Then I had to move forward, no excuses. And guess what? Nobody cared about the tiny details I had obsessed over. People just cared that I had actually created something. The real growth happened after I started, not before. That experience taught me a hard truth. The only way to get better is by doing, not by overthinking. Imagine two people. One spends years perfecting an idea but never launches it. The other starts at 80%, puts their work out into the world, learns from real feedback, and improves over time. Who do you think wins in the long run? Perfection is just an illusion. There is no perfect time, perfect decision, or perfect outcome. There's only action or inaction. So whatever you're stuck on, whether it's a project, a decision, or an idea, get it to 80%, then release it into the world. Because at the end of the day, nobody remembers the person who waited for perfection. They remember the one who actually showed up. 6. Talk to someone who's blunt and doesn't coddle you. Let's be real. Most people don't want advice. They want comfort. They don't actually want someone to tell them what they need to hear. They want someone to pat them on the back and say, "Oh no, you're totally right to overthink this. It's such a tough decision. I'd be overanalyzing too." And that's exactly why you need a blunt, no-nonsense friend in your life. Someone who doesn't have the patience for your overthinking. Overthinkers love to ask for advice, but let's be honest, most of the time, it's not because they don't know what to do. It's because they're stalling. They go to 5 different friends, explain the same situation over and over, and wait for someone to give them a magical solution that removes all doubt and risk. But no amount of talking will ever do that. That's why you need the blunt friend. The one who will listen, roll their eyes and say, "Dude, you already know what you want to do. Just do it. Stop overcomplicating this. You're making excuses. You're not confused. You're scared. Make a move." Is it harsh? Yes. But does it work? Absolutely. Most of the people in your life are too nice to be helpful. They don't want to hurt your feelings, so they'll sugarcoat things, tell you to take your time, and let you wallow in indecision. But the blunt friend? They don't care about sparing your feelings. They care about getting you unstuck. They don't let you drown in hypotheticals. They remind you that you've survived every bad decision before, and you'll survive this one too. They call out your excuses and force you to face the real issue: fear. There was a time when I was completely stuck in my own head about a huge decision. I had an opportunity to make a big change in my life, but I kept second-guessing myself. So what did I do? I asked every single person I knew for their opinion. I gathered advice like it was my full-time job, and instead of getting clarity, I just got more confused. Finally, I talked to a friend who has zero patience for my nonsense. I laid out my whole dramatic internal debate, expecting her to help me weigh the pros and cons. Instead, she just stared at me and said, "You already know what you want to do. You're just scared to admit it, so stop wasting my time and do the thing." It was exactly what I needed to hear. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just the truth. And she was right. I did know what I wanted. I just needed someone to call me out on my own self-sabotage. There's nothing wrong with seeking advice, but if you only talk to people who coddle you, you'll stay stuck forever. The truth is, overthinking is just a safety blanket. It makes you feel like you're being productive, but in reality, you're just delaying action. And the longer you delay, the scarier the decision feels. That's why you need at least one person in your life who will tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. Someone who won't let you hide behind excuses. Someone who will call you out on your own overthinking and force you to face reality. So if you're spiraling in indecision, go find that person. Tell them your situation and let them snap you out of it. Because the truth is, you don't need more over-analyzing. You need one honest answer and the guts to follow through. All right, let's be real. Overthinking is ruining your life. It's keeping you stuck, making you anxious, and stealing time you'll never get back. And the worst part? Most of the things you obsess over don't even matter in the long run. So here's the truth. You don't need more time to think. You need more courage to act. You'll never be 100% certain. Make the decision anyway. Your first instinct is probably right. Trust it. The worst-case scenario, you'll survive it. You always do. Give yourself a deadline and then move on. Perfection is a lie. 80% is good enough. And for the love of everything, get yourself a blunt friend who will tell you to stop being dramatic and just do the thing. At the end of the day, life moves forward, with or without you. The only question is, are you going to sit around thinking about it, or are you actually going to live it? So if this video hit home for you, drop a comment below and tell me, what's something you've been overthinking for way too long? And if you know someone who needs this message, share it with them. Because let's be honest, we all know at least one person who needs to get out of their own head. Now go do the thing. No more overthinking.